Welcome to our professional lecture series, Cybersecurity. All you want to know. In this very first episode, we will explore one of the most fundamental concepts in cybersecurity, the CIA Triad. This model forms the backbone of information security and is essential for certification-level learning. Let's begin our journey. The agenda for today is structured to give you a complete understanding of the CIA Triad. We'll start with its definition and history, then dive into each pillar: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. For each, we'll look at practical controls and real-world examples. Later, we'll discuss how organizations balance these pillars, explore extended concepts like non-repudiation and AA, and finally connect this knowledge to certification exams and interview preparation. By the end, you'll have a strong foundation to build upon in future episodes. Let's begin with one of the most fundamental concepts in cybersecurity, the CIA Triad. CI stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This model forms the backbone of every security framework, certification, and audit checklist. These three pillars aren't just theoretical ideas. They're practical requirements that organizations must implement to operate safely in today's digital world. Starting with confidentiality. This simply means keeping information private and ensuring that only the right people can access it. Think of it like locking your personal diary so no one else can read it. For example, in a hospital, patient records should only be accessible to doctors and nurses involved in treatment. If unauthorized people can view them, that's a confidentiality failure. Organizations enforce confidentiality using passwords, encryption, and secure communication channels. When confidentiality is compromised, it can result in data leaks, regulatory fines, and loss of trust. Next is integrity. This focuses on ensuring that data remains accurate, consistent, and unchanged throughout its life cycle. Imagine if your bank balance suddenly showed the wrong amount because someone altered the records. That would be a serious issue. Integrity ensures that data is not modified either accidentally or maliciously. To maintain integrity, organizations use controls like checksums, digital signatures, and version control. If integrity is compromised, decisions may be based on incorrect data, leading to fraud, errors, or operational failures. Finally, we have availability. This ensures that data, systems, and network resources are accessible to authorized users whenever they are needed. Think about online banking. If the system is down when you need to make a transaction, it becomes useless. Availability is all about keeping systems up and running, even during peak usage or unexpected disruptions. Organizations achieve this through backups, disaster recovery planning, and protection against attacks. Without availability, even secure and accurate data loses its value because it cannot be accessed when required. We'll explore each of these pillars in greater detail in the upcoming sections. In simple terms, the goal of the CIA Triad is to ensure that information is secure, accurate, and accessible. If even one of these pillars fails, the entire system is affected. Confidentiality prevents unauthorized access, integrity prevents unauthorized changes, and availability ensures continuous access. In certifications like ISO IC 27001 or CISSP, you'll frequently encounter questions based on these three principles. In interviews, you may be asked to explain the triad with practical examples. Even in day-to-day business scenarios, organizations rely on this model to balance security with usability. For instance, hospitals must keep patient data confidential while also ensuring it is quickly available during emergencies. So whenever you think about cybersecurity, start with the CIA Triad. It's not just theory. It's the foundation behind every security decision you make. Mastering it will give you strong confidence both in your professional practice and in your certification journey. Before we jump into the core concepts, let's take a moment to understand the history of the CIA Triad. The CIA Triad has a fascinating origin. It dates back to the 1970s and 1980s when organizations began relying heavily on computer systems. During that time, military and government agencies faced a major challenge: how to protect classified information in digital form. They needed a simple and universal model to guide their security policies. That's where the CIA Triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, came into the picture. Initially, this model was used mainly in defense and intelligence environments where protecting sensitive information was critical. Over time, its importance grew, and it was adopted into broader security frameworks such as ISO IC 27001 and guidelines from National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. For example, ISO 27001 aligns many of its controls with these three pillars, and NIST publications frequently reference the triad when defining security objectives. What makes the CIA Triad truly timeless is its adaptability. Even though threats have evolved, from insider misuse in earlier decades to ransomware and cloud-related risks today, the core principles still hold strong. Confidentiality continues to protect sensitive data. Integrity ensures data accuracy, and availability guarantees access when needed. From a certification perspective, understanding this history gives you valuable context. In exams like CISSP and CISA, many questions are built around these principles. For instance, if a system becomes unavailable due to a denial-of-service attack, it clearly points to a failure in availability. From an audit perspective, this historical foundation is equally important. Many security controls we use today were originally designed with these principles in mind. Access control mechanisms were created to enforce confidentiality, logging and monitoring support integrity, and disaster recovery planning ensures availability. In interviews, you might be asked why the CIA Triad is still relevant today. A strong answer connects its history with modern practice, explaining that while technology and threats have evolved, the Triad remains the foundation on which all modern security frameworks are built. So, the origin of the CIA Triad is not just a piece of history. It's a reminder that strong cybersecurity principles must be simple, universal, and adaptable. That's exactly why this model has stood the test of time and continues to guide certifications, audits, and real-world security practices today. Confidentiality is the first pillar of the CIA Triad, and it's all about keeping sensitive information private. In simple terms, it means making sure that only the right people can see certain data, while everyone else is kept out. Organizations usually divide their information into categories like public, internal, confidential, or restricted, and then set rules so that each type of data is only accessible to the right group of people. Think of it like this: you have a personal diary. You wouldn't want just anyone to open it and read your thoughts. So, you'd keep it locked, and only you would have the key. That's confidentiality, protecting information so it doesn't end up in the wrong hands. In real life, companies and institutions deal with all kinds of information. Some of it can be shared openly, but some of it is very sensitive, like employee records, financial details, or patient medical files. For example, in a hospital, patient records should only be seen by the doctors and nurses treating that patient. If someone else in the hospital can access those records without a valid reason, that's a confidentiality failure. To protect confidentiality, organizations use tools like passwords, secure communication channels, and encryption. Encryption is like scrambling the information so that even if someone manages to steal it, they can't understand it without the right key. Secure communication channels, such as VPNs or secure websites, HTTPS, make sure that when information is sent, outsiders can't intercept and read it. Another important part of confidentiality is checking who is trying to access the system. This is done through authentication, things like strong passwords, fingerprint scans, or multi-factor authentication, where you need both a password and a code sent to your phone. These steps make sure that only authorized people get in. Why is this so important? Because if confidentiality is broken, the consequences can be serious. A company could face heavy fines, lose customer trust, or damage its reputation. Imagine if a hospital accidentally leaked patient records. Not only would it face legal trouble, but patients would lose confidence in the hospital's ability to protect their privacy. So, confidentiality isn't just about keeping secrets. It's about protecting sensitive information, making sure only the right people can access it, and keeping organizations safe from leaks, fines, and loss of trust. That's why confidentiality is considered the first and most important step in building a secure system. Now let's look at how confidentiality is actually enforced in day-to-day practice. It's not just a theory. Organizations use specific controls to make sure sensitive information stays private. The first control is role-based access control, RBAC. This simply means people only get access to the information they need for their job. For example, HR staff can see employee records, but someone in marketing cannot. This prevents unnecessary exposure of sensitive data. Next is multi-factor authentication, MFA. Instead of relying only on a password, MFA adds extra layers of security, like a code sent to your phone or a fingerprint scan. Even if someone steals your password, they still can't get in without the second factor. Then we have data encryption. Encryption scrambles information so that even if it's stolen, it looks like gibberish without the right key. Standards like AES and RSA are commonly used to protect data both when it's stored and when it's being sent across networks. Another important control is secure email and messaging platforms. These make sure that private conversations or sensitive documents aren't intercepted while being shared. Think of it as sending a sealed envelope instead of a postcard. Finally, organizations follow privacy policies and compliance frameworks such as GDPR in Europe or HIPAA in healthcare. These laws and standards require strict confidentiality measures and hold companies accountable if they fail to protect personal data. To make this more relatable, let's take the example of a hospital. Patient records must remain confidential. Doctors and nurses treating the patient need access, but no one else should be able to see those files. If those records are exposed, the hospital could face lawsuits, heavy fines, and most importantly, a loss of trust from patients. So, confidentiality controls are not just technical settings hidden in systems. They are practical tools that protect sensitive information, build trust with customers, and keep organizations compliant with the law. When you think of confidentiality, remember it's about making sure the right people have access and the wrong people don't. Integrity is the second pillar of the CIA Triad, and it's all about keeping information accurate and trustworthy. In simple terms, it means making sure data isn't changed by accident or tampered with on purpose. If information is altered, even slightly, it can cause serious problems because decisions are based on that data. One way to protect integrity is by stopping unauthorized modifications. Only the right people should be able to make changes, and systems should block everyone else. Another method is using hashing and checksums. These are like digital fingerprints for data. If the fingerprint changes, you know the file has been altered. Organizations also use version control and audit trails. Version control keeps track of changes so you can always go back to the correct version. Audit trails record who accessed or modified data, giving accountability and transparency. Finally, secure system configurations help prevent accidental or malicious changes by keeping systems properly set up and updated. Why is this important? Because integrity protects trust. Imagine if financial records in a company were altered. Even a small change could lead to fraud, compliance issues, or wrong decisions. Without integrity, organizations cannot rely on their own information. From a business perspective, integrity ensures that leaders can make decisions confidently, knowing the data is correct. From a learning perspective, certifications often test your understanding of integrity. For example, you might be asked, which control ensures integrity in a file system? The answer could be hashing or file monitoring. In interviews, recruiters may ask how you would ensure integrity in financial transactions. A strong answer would mention digital signatures, monitoring tools, and database rules that prevent invalid changes. So, integrity is not just about accuracy. It's about making sure information stays reliable and consistent, protecting both the organization and the people who depend on it. When confidentiality keeps data private, integrity makes sure it stays correct. Together, they build trust in the system. Integrity is all about keeping information accurate and trustworthy, and organizations use several practical controls to make sure of that. One key control is digital signatures and certificates. These act like a stamp of authenticity, proving that the data really comes from the right source and hasn't been tampered with. Next, we have file integrity monitoring tools. These tools constantly check important files and alert us if something changes unexpectedly. It's like having a security guard watching over your data. Database constraints and validation rules are another safeguard. They make sure that only correct and valid information gets stored. For example, a banking system won't allow a negative balance entry if the rules don't permit it. Then there are logging and monitoring systems. These record who accessed or changed data, creating accountability. If something goes wrong, logs help track down what happened and who was involved. Finally, regular patch management keeps systems consistent and secure. Updating software regularly prevents vulnerabilities that could allow unauthorized changes. To see how this works in real life, let's take the example of banking. Financial transactions must remain accurate and tamper-proof. If transaction records are altered, even slightly, it could lead to fraud, financial loss, or regulatory trouble. That's why banks rely heavily on these integrity controls. So, integrity controls aren't just technical features hidden in systems. They are practical tools that protect accuracy, build trust, and keep organizations safe. When confidentiality makes sure data stays private, integrity makes sure it stays correct. Together, they ensure information is reliable and dependable. Availability is the third pillar of the CIA Triad, and it's all about making sure systems and data are accessible whenever people need them. In simple terms, it means that information and services should always be up and running so they're available exactly when required. Organizations achieve this by building reliable infrastructure and using uptime monitoring to quickly detect and fix problems. They also set up redundancy and failover mechanisms, which act like backup systems ready to take over if the main one fails. Another important part of availability is disaster recovery and backup planning. These measures ensure that if something unexpected happens, like a system crash or even a natural disaster, data can be restored and services can continue with minimal disruption. Availability also means defending against denial-of-service attacks, where attackers try to overwhelm systems and make them unavailable. Strong defenses help keep services running smoothly, even under pressure. Why does this matter? Because availability directly impacts business continuity and customer trust. For example, an e-commerce platform must stay online during peak shopping seasons. If the site goes down, customers get frustrated, sales are lost, and the company's reputation suffers. So, availability isn't just about uptime statistics. It's about resilience, making sure that systems and data are always accessible when needed, even in the face of failures or attacks. When confidentiality keeps data private and integrity keeps it accurate, availability ensures it's usable. Together, these three pillars form the complete foundation of cybersecurity. Availability is enforced through practical, everyday controls that keep systems running and data accessible. One of the most common methods is load balancing, which spreads traffic across multiple servers so no single server gets overloaded. Alongside this, clustering ensures that if one server or node fails, another can immediately take over, keeping services online. Organizations also rely on cloud-based redundancy solutions. These provide extra capacity and resilience, so even if hardware fails, services can continue without interruption. Another key control is regular data backups and testing. Backups are only useful if they work when needed, So testing recovery processes is essential to ensure data can be restored quickly after an incident. Incident response planning and drills prepare teams for disruptions. By practicing responses to outages or attacks, organizations can react faster and minimize downtime. Finally, network monitoring and intrusion prevention systems act as a defense line, detecting unusual activity and blocking threats before they can disrupt services. For example, think about online banking. Customers expect 24/7 access to their accounts. If the system goes down, even for a short time, it can damage trust and cause financial instability. That's why banks invest heavily in these availability controls. So, availability controls aren't just technical settings hidden in systems. They are practical tools that protect accessibility, ensure business continuity, and maintain customer confidence. Together with confidentiality and integrity, they complete the foundation of cybersecurity. Balancing the CIA Triad is one of the biggest challenges in cybersecurity. Each pillar is important, but focusing too much on one can weaken the others. For example, if you make confidentiality too strict, systems may become hard to use. If you prioritize availability without enough safeguards, you risk exposing data. And while integrity requires strong checks, too many controls can slow down operations. That's why organizations rely on risk-based decision-making frameworks. Instead of trying to make everything perfect, they weigh the risks and decide which controls make sense for their business. The goal is to align security with business objectives, so protection doesn't come at the cost of usability. Another key part of balance is continuous monitoring and improvement. Threats change, technology evolves, and business needs shift. By regularly reviewing and adjusting controls, organizations can maintain the right balance over time. From a business perspective, balance protects both security and usability. A good example is hospitals. Patient records must remain confidential, but during emergencies, doctors need quick access. Striking that balance ensures both privacy and patient safety. So, balancing the CIA Triad isn't just about putting controls in place. It's about making practical, risk-aware decisions that keep systems secure, usable, and aligned with business goals. When confidentiality, integrity, and availability are balanced, organizations achieve a strong and effective security posture. The CIA Triad gives us the foundation, but modern cybersecurity goes further with extended concepts that add depth and accountability. One of these is non-repudiation. This simply means that once someone performs an action or transaction, they cannot deny it later. For example, digital signatures provide proof that a message or transaction really came from the claim sender and that it hasn't been altered. This builds trust and prevents disputes. Another important extension is AA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. Authentication is about proving identity, like logging in with a password or fingerprint. Authorization decides what that person is allowed to do once inside the system. Accounting keeps track of actions, recording who did what and when, often through logs. Together, non-repudiation and strengthen identity management, enforce accountability, and support compliance with laws and standards. They make sure organizations can prove actions, trace responsibilities, and maintain trust with stakeholders. From a business perspective, these concepts protect accountability and compliance. For example, in e-commerce, non-repudiation ensures that a customer cannot deny making a purchase once it's confirmed. So, while confidentiality, integrity, and availability form the core, extended concepts like non-repudiation and add another layer of assurance. They enhance trust, support compliance, and create a more complete security framework. We'll explore these extended concepts in greater detail in upcoming episodes. The CIA Triad isn't just a classroom concept. It shows up everywhere in certifications, interviews, and even workplace scenarios. In exams like ISO 27001, CISA, and CISSP, You'll often find scenario-based questions that test how well you can apply confidentiality, integrity, and availability in real situations. These exams don't just ask for definitions. They want to see if you can connect the theory to practical controls and outcomes. In interviews, recruiters frequently ask direct questions such as, explain the CIA Triad with examples. A strong candidate doesn't stop at definitions. Instead, they explain how confidentiality protects patient records in healthcare, how integrity ensures financial transactions remain accurate, and how availability keeps online services running smoothly. That ability to bridge theory with practice is what sets you apart. For example, in certifications you might see a question like, which pillar is violated when a system goes down due to a denial-of-service attack? The correct answer is availability. Or in interviews, you may be asked, how do you enforce integrity in financial transactions? A strong response would mention digital signatures, file monitoring, and database constraints. From a business perspective, the CIA Triad protects organizational assets, ensures compliance with regulations, and builds customer trust. From a practical perspective, it provides a lens to evaluate whether controls are effective and whether systems are truly secure. So, the CIA Triad is not just a theoretical model. It's a core exam topic, a common interview question, and a practical framework that organizations use every day to protect information and maintain trust. Mastering it gives you confidence in certifications, interviews, and real-world practice. And as we move forward in upcoming episodes, we'll explore how to answer these questions effectively, with examples that make your responses stand out. Let's take a moment to recap everything we've covered in this episode. The CIA Triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, is the foundation of cybersecurity. These three pillars don't work in isolation. They come together to ensure that information systems are secure, reliable, and trustworthy. Confidentiality is about protecting sensitive data from unauthorized access. We saw how organizations classify data, enforce access controls, and use encryption to safeguard information. Real-world examples like protecting patient records in healthcare or financial data in banking show why confidentiality is critical. Without it, organizations risk data leaks, reputational damage, and regulatory penalties. Integrity ensures that data remains accurate, consistent, and trustworthy. We explored controls such as digital signatures, file integrity monitoring, and database validation rules. Integrity failures can lead to fraud, compliance violations, or poor decision-making. In audits, integrity is tested through tamper-proof logs and validation mechanisms, while in certifications it often appears in scenario-based questions. Availability guarantees that systems and data are accessible when needed. We looked at redundancy, backups, disaster recovery, and protection against denial-of-service attacks. Availability failures can result in downtime, lost revenue, and customer dissatisfaction. In interviews, recruiters often ask how you would ensure availability during a ransomware attack. A strong answer would mention backups, redundancy, and incident response planning. Beyond the triad, we also introduced extended concepts like non-repudiation and AA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. These add depth by ensuring accountability, compliance, and trust. We'll explore these extended concepts in greater detail in upcoming episodes. The key idea here is balance. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability must align with business objectives. Too much focus on one pillar can weaken the others. For example, excessive confidentiality controls may reduce usability, while prioritizing availability without safeguards can compromise security. Risk-based decision-making helps organizations strike the right balance. From a certification perspective, the CIA Triad is everywhere. ISO 27001, CISA, and CISSP exams all test your understanding of these pillars. From an audit perspective, the Triad provides a lens to evaluate whether controls are effective. From a business perspective, it ensures compliance, trust, and resilience. So, The outcome of this episode is clear. You now have a balanced, practical, and audit-ready understanding of the CIA Triad. This knowledge is not just theoretical. It prepares you for certifications, interviews, and real-world implementation. Remember, confidentiality protects data, integrity ensures accuracy, and availability maintains access. Together, they form the backbone of cybersecurity. Mastering this triad gives you the confidence to move forward in your certification-ready journey. Thank you for being part of episode 1 of Cybersecurity. All you want to know. Today, we built a strong foundation with the CIA Triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the 3 pillars that every security framework is built upon. This is just the beginning of our certification-ready journey. In the upcoming episodes, we'll continue exploring cybersecurity fundamentals in the same structured, professional, and easy-to-follow style. If you enjoyed learning with me today and want to stay updated on future episodes, you can subscribe and click the bell icon. That way, you'll never miss the next step in your journey. See you in the next session.